Mr. President, the upcoming Supreme Court decisions on constitutionality of the individual mandate are important, not only for the fate of that provision, but for their effect on the powers of the federal government and for the very survival of individual economic activity. I yield the floor.
Senator from Illinois.
Mr. President, I'd like to speak on the pending amendment. Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of the Kirk, Manchin, Heller, and Blunt amendment regarding Iran. What we know with regard to Iran is that they have persecuted 330,000 Baha'is in their country, registered their houses, kicked their kids out of university, and made sure that they can do no business with the Iranian government. We know that Iran is the chief sponsor of the terrorist group Hezbollah that has had a grip on southern Lebanon. We know that Iran jumped the Shiite divide to also support the terrorist group called Hamas in the Sunni community. We know that Iran has been a state sponsor of terror as certified by Presidents Carter, Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush, and Obama. We know that Iran recently sentenced an Iranian actress to 90 lashes for appearing in an Australian movie without a headdress. We know that Iran recently arrested 70 of their fashion designers for crimes that I can't even imagine that they would have committed. But most importantly, we know that the International Atomic Energy Agency has certified that now Iran has enriched uranium far beyond needs to run a civilian reactor program, that Iranian military personnel have been involved in acquiring information on the design of nuclear weapons, that the Iranians are working on the details of a warhead for their Shahab-3 missile that fits all of the profiles of a nuclear weapon. And finally, we know, according to the Attorney General of the United States, Eric Holder, that Iran and its Iranian Revolutionary Guards Quds Force established a bomb plot with the Mexican cartel, the Zetas, to blow up a Georgetown restaurant, to kill a number of Americans, even talked about possibly killing senators, in an effort to assassinate the Saudi Arabian ambassador to the United States here in Washington, D.C. I think it's clear with this bipartisan amendment that we all recognize we are at a turning point and that we need new sanctions against Iran. Without crippling sanctions, I believe that we have then turned the international community on the path towards war, likely between Iran and our allies in Israel. This would cause a needless loss of life. It would lead to higher energy prices for the West and increased instability here and in Europe when we can least afford it. Therefore, we need to level crippling sanctions, especially against the Iranian center of gravity, the Central Bank of Iran. The Central Bank of Iran is the principal funder of the Ahmadinejad regime itself. It is probably the source of funds so substantially provided to terrorist groups by Iran, to Hamas and Hezbollah. That it is the Central Bank of Iran that's supporting operations in Afghanistan and Iraq against our allies there. It's the Central Bank of Iran that's a principal underlying financial support for the Iranian nuclear program. And the Central Bank of Iran that is the paymaster for the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Force, especially their Quds Force. Likely the money that was planned for the Zetas to carry out the bomb plot in Washington, D.C., had its origin point with the Central Bank of Iran. That's why 92 senators, Republicans and Democrats, despite these partisan times, have joined together to say that we should level this crippling sanction against the Central Bank of Iran. And I want to thank the 92 senators that signed the Schumer-Kirk letter on this. Indications are that the Obama administration is going to take further actions on the Central Bank of Iran, and this amendment lays out the full roadmap for what we should do. What does the amendment do? It's patterned after the bipartisan amendment just adopted under the authorship of Democratic California Congressman Howard Berman, just unanimously adopted in the House Foreign Affairs Committee, that says for any business, if you do business with the Central Bank of Iran, that you cannot do business with the United States of America. Now, we know that world financial arrangements and especially oil markets are complicated instruments. And so under this bipartisan amendment, we have a 180-day time clock. to make sure that especially key allies and friends of the United States can unhook from Iranian oil and the financial ties that bind them to Iran. This is particularly important for Turkey, for Sri Lanka, for Italy, and for Greece, who would all use that time under this amendment to unhook from Iran. And in this, I think we are going to have a very willing partner of the government of Saudi Arabia, recently obviously focused on because the Iranians tried to kill their ambassador to the United States. I will be meeting with that ambassador tomorrow, and I think this amendment lays the groundwork not just to work with Israel, not just to work with Saudi Arabia, but our allies to collapse this central bank. Without action, I think we turn the Middle East, and especially the Persian Gulf, towards war. And I think that's why we should take every non-military action possible to avoid that conflict, to collapse the central bank of Iran. There are a number of bipartisan heroes in this story. Senator Lieberman, who has been a key actor on these issues and a partner with me on many of these issues. Senator Gillibrand, also who's helped out. Obviously, Senator Schumer, that was the co-author of the 92 senator letter on the central bank of Iran. Senator Menendez, who also has an outstanding idea on creating an Iranian oil-free zone. And obviously my bipartisan partner on this and best friend in the Senate, Senator Manchin, that joined me on this effort. Together, I think, we can have a clear statement about what has happened with the IAEA and the Iranian nuclear program, with their record on human rights, with their record on support for terrorism, and most importantly, according to the Attorney General, with a brazen attempt to attack the United States directly with this bomb plot. I urge members of this chamber to vote for this amendment. It is now pending to the National Defense Authorization Act because it puts a clear statement forward, levels the toughest non-military sanction that we had, helps reduce the chance for war or market and oil instability and higher prices, and has such a strong bipartisan pedigree behind it. And with that, I yield the floor.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that my legislative fellow Navy Lieutenant Commander Joe Ruzicka be granted floor privileges for the duration of debate on the 2012 National Defense Authorization Act.
Without objection.
I ask to suggest the absence of quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Senator from New Hampshire.
I ask unanimous consent that the quorum call be rescinded.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, as a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee and as the ranking member of the Readiness Subcommittee, I would like to speak for a few moments to comment on the National Defense Authorization Act. I would like to begin by thanking the Majority Leader for honoring his commitment to bring the National Defense Authorization Act to the floor for debate, amendment, and passage. As Leader Reid pointed out this morning, this would have been the first time in a half-century in which we would not have passed a National Defense Authorization bill. In the midst of two wars with our brave sons and daughters, husbands and wives fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan, with our country facing a very serious threat from radical Islamist terrorists, that would have been unacceptable. So I would very much like to thank Chairman Levin and Ranking Member McCain for their leadership. In this era that has unfortunately been characterized by gridlock and partisanship here in Washington, The Senate Armed Services Committee has represented a welcome exception. The Senate Armed Services Committee has a long-enjoyed, well-deserved reputation for professionalism and bipartisanship as we work across party lines to support our troops and their families who sacrifice so much for our country to keep us safe. This bipartisan spirit is reflected by the fact that the Armed Services Committee unanimously reported the initial defense authorization bill out of committee this summer and did so again this week after reducing the authorization levels consistent with the requirements that we need to meet here in light of the fiscal crisis that our country faces, and after revising the detainee compromise to take into consideration some of the administration's concerns. This year, once again, the quality of Senator Levin and Senator McCain's leadership is reflected in the quality of legislation the Armed Services Committee has produced. And this bill will ensure that our warfighters have what they need to accomplish their missions, protect themselves, and defend our country. I'm especially proud of the work of the Readiness Subcommittee. It's been a pleasure to work with Chairman McCaskill, and our committee made significant, well-informed reductions that achieve taxpayer savings without endangering our military readiness. However, going forward, I want to raise one issue. We have to guard against excessive cuts to our readiness accounts that will leave our troops and our nation less prepared for future contingencies. And in light of the Super Committee meeting here in Washington, we have to come to an agreement to avoid what Secretary Panetta has described as catastrophic and as a deep concern for our national security if those sequestration cuts occur. I am particularly pleased that key provisions of the Brown-Ayotte no contracting with the enemy legislation are included in this bill. This provision will make it easier for the Defense Department contracting officials in Central Command area operations to avoid contracts with contractors who, unfortunately, in some instances, have funneled taxpayer dollars to our enemies. Let me conclude by saying that I very much, again, appreciate the leadership and the bipartisan nature of the work done on the Armed Services Committee. This is a very important bill that I'm very glad we're going to take up and fully debate in the Senate, and I certainly would urge my colleagues to pass this bill. I would also, Mr. President, ask for unanimous consent to set aside the pending amendment and to call up Amendment 1065.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered. Clerk will report.
The Senator from New Hampshire, Ms. Ayotte, for herself and others, proposes an amendment number 1065. At the end of subtitle C of Title I, add the following.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the reading of the amendment be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment that I have just offered to the Defense Authorization Bill is an amendment that Senator Reid from Rhode Island is joining me in sponsoring. And the amendment itself would allow the Air Force to reduce its strategic airlift aircraft inventory to what they need to meet our readiness needs. And it would save $1.2 billion of taxpayer money in the next few years without compromising the readiness that we need to protect our nation. Our nation's strategic airlift fleet provides global air mobility to the United States military. As General Raymond Johns, Commander of the Air Force Air Mobility Command, said in his statement before a hearing before the Armed Services Readiness Subcommittee, before the Armed Services Committee, where we had this amendment addressed, he said the strategic airlift is a national asset allowing America to deliver hope, to fuel the fight, and to save lives anywhere in the world within hours of getting the call. In order to meet this need, the United States uses C-5 and C-17s as their strategic airlift capability, and current federal law sets the Air Force's minimum number of strategic airlift aircraft at 316. However, the Air Force and the administration, when they submitted the Department of Defense submitted their budget request, made very clear that we don't need to keep the minimum requirement at 316 to meet the needs of our country, that only a minimum requirement of 301 aircraft are needed to meet the strategic airlift capacity requirements of our country. The requirement to maintain the bottom line limit of 316 is a situation where Congress is requiring the Air Force to maintain planes that it does not need to protect the readiness of our country. And so it was the Air Force that wanted this amendment to be brought forward to ensure that we could save taxpayer dollars, over $1 billion. This is very important at a time when we are asking our military, as a result of the Budget Control Act, over the next 10 years to reduce spending by close to $450 billion. So they have to look at areas where we're spending money that we don't need, or we're maintaining assets that we do not need to meet our readiness. And that is why I brought this amendment forward. It's a common sense amendment that I'm so pleased that Senator Reid has joined me on, and I hope that my colleagues will support it in this time where we have great fiscal challenges, but the need remains ever present to protect our national security against those who would want to harm Americans and our allies for what we believe in. We have to allow the Air Force and our armed forces to make sensible decisions on where they need to put resources to protect our country, and that is what this amendment does. I will say that we had a full hearing in a subcommittee of the Armed Services Committee on the strategic airlift aircraft requirement, and the military testified uniformly that reducing the number of the strategic airlift from 316 to 301 would put us in a very strong position to meet every contingency that we can anticipate going forward, including multiple contingencies around the world as well as homeland events. So this is an area that's been studied very, very carefully, will allow us to continue to protect our country, but will again save $1.2 billion in taxpayer money over the next few years. So I would urge my colleagues to support this amendment.
Yield for a question.
Yes.
Is it true that the United States Air Force not only supports this, but they think it's one of their very high priorities? Is that correct?
Yes, Senator McCain. This is a very high priority of the Air Force because in this difficult time when they are making reductions, this is an area where they can meet our national security needs, but Congress has actually asked the Air Force to maintain more planes than it needs. So this is a common sense provision and is very important to our Air Force.
In these times of very difficult decisions have to be made, budgetary decisions, isn't it true also that the President's budget in 2011 had included a plan to retire 17 C-5As in 2011 and 5 in 2012?
Yes, Senator McCain. Actually, what this amendment that I'm bringing forward is consistent with the administration's budget request that they submitted for the consideration of Congress. And so really this is a situation where after a careful hearing that we had in the subcommittee before the Armed Services Committee, after the administration has submitted this request, after the Air Force has asked for it, it makes complete sense that we would allow them to reduce this strategic airlift capacity.
And could I ask, really no state that these aircraft are presently stationed in would lose that mission, that the older C-5s would convert to new C-17s. Is that pretty much a conclusion you would draw from the Air Force's planning?
That's certainly my understanding of it, Senator McCain. This is not going to be a diminishment for states. This is just going to be a right-sizing of the fleet, which what I'm concerned about is if we don't pass amendments like this, where the administration's asked for it, where all of the data supports that we don't need to keep the level at 316, where we can save $1.2 billion by doing it, how can we then ask our military to make significant reductions if we don't allow them to do common sense things like this?
Well, I thank the senator from New Hampshire, and I hope that we could dispose of this amendment. I don't know if a recorded vote would be required by any of the members, but I hope we could voice vote it. Aye.
Mr. President. Mr. President, first let me thank the senator from New Hampshire for her, not only her comments about the committee work and about me and Senator McCain personally, but I want to just tell her and tell anyone within my listening voice just what a valuable member of our committee she is. She is someone who really is there all the time, and I very much value the input that she gives to us because of her regular presence at our hearings and our meetings. And so I want to thank her for that as well as her comment. I also want to thank her for this amendment. It's a good amendment. I understand from my staff that, and from what the senator said as well, that there was a hearing that was held specifically on this subject, and that Senator Reid, as chairman, had made a commitment to hold that hearing, as I understand it. He is a co-sponsor of the amendment of Senator Ayotte, and as far as from what everything I can see, it is a good amendment, a sound amendment. It does what Senator McCain said as well as Senator Ayotte. It avoids spending money on things we can't afford to spend money on. It's that simple. So I don't know of any objection on this side, and I support the amendment.
Is there further debate on the amendment?
I just ask the
Senator from Arizona.
Is it true we're trying to clear the amendment on both sides at the moment?
I don't know of an objection on this side, and as far as I'm concerned, then, if there's no further debate, the chair can put the question, the presiding officer can put the question.
I ask the chair that we vote.
If there's no further debate, without objection, amendment is agreed to.
Thank you very much, Mr.
And I would move to reconsider that vote.
Move to lay on the table.
Without objection.
Mr. President.
Senator from Connecticut.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank the chairman, Senator Levin, and the ranking member, Senator McCain, for the immensely important work they have done on the bill we are considering, S. 1867, the Defense Reauthorization Act. It is a massively important bill, a big bill, and I want to focus on just one part of it, seemingly a small section, but a vitally important provision of the bill that enables our Department of Defense to more effectively counter improvised explosive devices known as IEDs that have been a major source of attacks against United States and coalition forces in the wars of Iraq and Afghanistan, and threaten not only our troops there but all around the world and our coalition partners. And I want to thank particularly one of my colleagues, Senator Bob Casey, who has been a champion of these efforts against the IEDs, or roadside bombs, for some time, and has been a leader relentlessly and tirelessly in this effort, and has included me and others, and I am proud to join him in seeking more effective measures. This summer saw the highest volume of IED incidents ever recorded in Operation Enduring Freedom, approximately 1,800 a month. That is a staggering and alarming number, and they continue. These devices are deadly and devastating, killing and maiming our troops and causing loss of limbs, traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress, other horrific injuries that are the signature wounds of the ongoing wars. In fact, roadside bombs cause 60% of all casualties in Afghanistan. They are the hidden killers in this war. And I speak with the urgency of an elected official whose state citizens are at risk and who are returning with the signature wounds of war, and whose lives and limbs can be preserved if we act effectively. I speak as a citizen who has visited the hospitals and the troops who have come back. We all have visited our constituents and their families, their loved ones, their friends and neighbors who have been victims of these terrible weapons of destruction. Most IEDs in Afghanistan, in fact, more than 80%, are made with materials originating in Pakistan. There is no magic bullet or panacea to solve this problem or address the challenge. It will take a comprehensive fight. Both the provisions contained in the Foreign Operations Appropriations Bill with regard to Pakistan and the Vital Force Protection Equipment in the Defense Authorization Bill are essential to shut down the sources of bomb-making materials in Pakistan. And they include steps to interdict bomb-making materials at the border and provide the armor and force protection against the IED threat. Roadside bombs in Afghanistan are typically made with calcium ammonium nitrate, a very common fertilizer, seemingly an innocent product, but capable of detonation when processed and packaged in these roadside bombs and then placed in areas where our troops go. This fertilizer from Pakistan accounts for more than 80% of the IEDs in Afghanistan. Every day, bags of this fertilizer are smuggled to Afghanistan from Pakistan, sometimes hidden in the convoys of goods that cross the open 1,500-mile border. The fertilizer pellets are boiled down, and the material is put in a package or container with an explosive detonator that is often linked to a simple trigger system, something such as a tripwire buried in the sand, awaiting the tire of a passing vehicle or the foot of an American soldier on patrol. At this moment, thousands of our soldiers and Marines have been injured. Thousands of these bombs are buried in Afghanistan soil, and sadly, many more will be planted in the coming weeks and months. Again, my colleague from Pennsylvania, Senator Casey, has been a leader in the Senate and indeed led a bipartisan group of senators, including myself, in writing to the Secretary of State to request greater diplomatic effort by our government to encourage Pakistan to stem the flow of bomb-making materials into Afghanistan. Then in August, we went on an official trip, a CODEL, to take the message straight to the government of Pakistan. We met with the most senior leaders of Pakistan, and we urged stronger action against the misuse of everyday materials by terrorist groups in making the bombs that kill and maim our troops in Afghanistan. We took this message to officials of Pakistan at the highest level, and they responded with a plan that is supposedly being implemented. But the fact is that stronger measures are needed. We need a crackdown and a shutdown on the bomb-making materials, the fertilizer and the ammonium calcium nitrate that is transported and smuggled across the border so that it can be made into bombs that maim and kill our troops from Connecticut, troops from across the country, troops who are who are innocently victims, and the people of Pakistan and Afghanistan themselves who become victims. We saw how our troops seek to protect themselves from these IEDs. In fact, at a sand-swept compound in Helmand Province in Afghanistan, our congressional delegation saw the most common types of protective practices and devices, including how our soldiers and Marines wear body armor, lie face down in the dirt, and drag a 10-foot pole with a hook at the end on the ground to look for the telltale signs of an IED. Other measures range from the use of dogs that sniff out bombs to huge armored vehicles and more advanced technology. But even with the most effective and advanced means of detection and disarming bombs, body armor is still essential to protecting our troops. Pakistan's plan to address the IED smuggling supply chain, which is a threat to its own people as well as our soldiers and Marines, has yet to be proved effective. The plan addresses border security, regulation of fertilizer materials, and promoting public awareness of the threat posed by these IEDs. But we cannot rely on Pakistan's goodwill to ensure that this important work is given the priority it requires. There can be no ambiguity, no doubt, no uncertainty in our relationship with Pakistan, and that is why I support even stronger measures that Senator Casey has championed as well in a process that he has suggested to withhold any assistance if verification cannot be accomplished. In its action, not mere plans or conferences, the Pakistanis need to prove that they are stopping and stemming the flow of fertilizer. They need to prove more than just goodwill or good intentions, but effective action to stem and stop the flow of all of the bomb-making materials across the border. We also must support efforts by the Department of Defense to procure and deploy body armor, such as this bill does, and equipment that protects all our troops in harm's way. We are all familiar with the force protection developments such as enhanced ceramic plates and redesigning vehicles with V-shaped hulls to deflect blast impacts. These advances, make no mistake, came at great expense in terms of blood and treasure to our nation. We learned how to properly equip our troops for these missions. Even at the end of Operation Enduring Freedom now is in sight, the requirement to develop even better protection continues, and it must be relentless and tireless. We cannot abandon efforts. We simply cannot abandon this fight to protect our troops in the field. The lessons learned will serve to honor our commitment to ensure that the brave men and women who protect our freedom and protect our safety and security have the best protection we can provide them. Enhanced ballistic armor, including underwear protection or blast boxers, are essential to combating the threat of roadside bombs. When an IED detonates against dismounted troops, it blasts sand and fragments that shred skin, literally tear apart the skin of our troops. Covering their legs and groin areas with flexible armor can prevent the amputation of a limb or worse. I've asked and been informed about delivery of this equipment. To date, 165,000 of the Tier 1 sets of blast protection have been delivered into theater. The Marine Corps received 15,000 sets of Tier 2 level protection delivered 4 days ahead of schedule. By the middle of next month, the Army will also receive its complete requirement of Tier 2 level sets. This armor was adapted from one of our allies, British forces, and the Army has now established domestic production of the equipment. And I am hopeful that additional types of protection will also be processed and produced and sent, and I hope it will be expeditiously. When I learned of this life-saving equipment and the challenges involved in delivery, I wrote to the Department of Defense urging swift delivery of the body armor. I was joined by colleagues Senator Casey, Bennett, and Whitehouse, and I am hopeful that this program will be an example of our body armor procurement system working effectively. I am hopeful that it will set an example and provide a model for this body armor being provided expeditiously as it is needed. And I look forward to our passing the Defense Authorization Bill, which continues these efforts to supply body armor and equipment needed for our troops in Afghanistan. This bill provides also for the equipment needed to interdict IEDs, from the small backpacks carried by our troops to UAVs to giant Buffalo vehicles. Interdiction also requires the right specialized equipment to detect materials to make those IEDs as they are smuggled across the porous Afghan-Pakistan border. This effort also requires training and awareness of both our military personnel and our allies in this fight. As of September 2011, the Afghan Border Police had 20,852 personnel. This growth is encouraging, but the Border Police have problems with endemic corruption, and they're effective only to the extent that our special forces augment this effort, and our special forces, our special operators, should be encouraged and enabled to continue this effort. Interdiction is an integral part of larger efforts to understand the battle space in this region. Force alone can't solve the problem. We need better intelligence and the right detection equipment combined with the efforts of our special forces. It must be truly a comprehensive effort, as the Defense Authorization Bill clearly recognizes. We need to show all who live on both sides of this border that the cost of supplying the ingredients of these bombs that kill and maim our troops is too high for them, just as it is too high for us to tolerate. Let me again thank the chairman, Senator Levin, and the ranking member, Senator McCain, for their recognition of this problem. Our nation has spent more than $500 billion in support of the war in Afghanistan. We've sustained more than 2,800 coalition casualties. An Afghanistan that is stable and self-sufficient certainly is our goal, and it depends on the tactical success of these efforts. IEDs remain the weapon of choice of our enemies. Should we not learn to successfully counter the threat of IEDs, we will see this asymmetrical threat repeated on the battlefield wherever our troops are deployed around the world. And given the enormity of this challenge, I urge my colleagues to remain committed to this goal, remain true to this strategy, and counter these IEDs. We must authorize both our foreign operations expenses and this bill. And I thank my colleagues for their bipartisan support, truly bipartisan support of these efforts. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Mississippi.
I ask unanimous consent that Lieutenant Commander Ted Eisenfeld, a very capable naval fellow in my office, be granted 4 privileges during the consideration of the Defense Authorization Bill.
Without objection.
President.
Senator from Maryland.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that floor privileges be granted to Lieutenant Commander Shane Nisley, a Navy fellow serving in my office during the pendency of S. 1867, the fiscal year 2012 National Defense Authorization Act.
Without objection.
And Mr. President, let me just comment with Senator Wicker, with his fellow, how valuable these fellows are in our office. And I just really am very grateful for Lieutenant Commander Nisley's service in my office. I know Senator Wicker feels the same. And my Lieutenant Commander Shane Nisley will be leaving my office next month, and I want to thank him very much for the service that he has provided in the Senate. Mr. President, in a moment I'm going to be asking unanimous consent that the Senate take up and confirm the nomination of Ken Kamposis to be Assistant Administrator for the Office of Water for the Environmental Protection Agency. Before I make that unanimous consent request, I want to just take a moment to say a few words about this nominee and the process that it has taken place in the United States Senate. I've known Ken Kamposis since I was first elected to Congress in 1986, and I've worked personally with him on a number of water-related issues. Ken has extensive background in water policy and legislative issues, having worked in the Congress for 25 years. I worked with him first when I was in the House of Representatives. I know the presiding officer also, when he was in the House, remembers the good work that Ken did for the House of Representatives. He's now worked, of course, in the United States Senate. He's played a role in crafting and defending numerous pieces of environmental legislation, including the Clean Water Act. At a time where there are so many controversial issues concerning water issues in the Congress, I think it's important that we have someone at the helm that has the confidence of senators on both sides of the aisle. I had the honor of chairing the subcommittee, the Environment and Public Works, on water and wildlife. Ken Kamposis enjoys the confidence of all the members of our committee. When his nomination was considered in the Environment and Public Works Committee back in July, that's when we took it up, Ken was praised by both Republicans and Democrats alike. Most of my colleagues have had the opportunity to work with him, and they're enthusiastic about his credentials and his level-headed bipartisan approach to every issue. It's time that the Senate take up this confirmation. It's the right thing to do. So, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to executive session to consider Calendar 403, that the nomination be confirmed with no intervening action or debate, that no further motions be in order to the nomination, that any statement related to the nomination be printed in the record, that the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action, and that the Senate then resume legislative session.
Is there objection?
Mr. President.
Senator from Wyoming.
Mr. President, reserving the right to object, there are still questions that need to be answered and information that needs to be provided, Mr. President, by Mr. Kamposis. I am concerned about the depth of his past involvement to change the scope of the Clean Water Act beyond congressional intent. To me, this nominee still needs to explain his views on public and stakeholder input on regulations that he would be in charge of, and explain his understanding of the role of Congress versus the role of the Environmental Protection Agency in terms of who makes the laws in this country. Until those issues are clarified, I do not believe it is appropriate for this nominee to move forward. And therefore, Mr. President, I object.
Mr. President.
Objection.
President, I ask for the regular order.
The senator from Maryland has the floor.
Mr. President, I'm going to yield the floor in one moment. Let me just say to my friend from Wyoming, I'm going to do my best to make sure you get all the information you need. I want to make sure every senator has all the information they need. I think this is a very important position to be filled. Mr. Kamposis has the qualifications and confidence. I want to make sure that's done as quickly as possible, and I respect my colleagues' views, and I will work to make sure he gets all the information he needs. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Arizona.
Mr. President, my understanding that the Senator from Colorado, Senator Udall, is coming over to propose an amendment, and I hope that will happen momentarily, and I hope that the members will be prepared with other amendments that we can dispose of this afternoon. I yield.
Mr. President.
Senator from Mississippi.
Mr. President, I rise this afternoon in support of the fiscal year 2012 National Defense Authorization Bill. As ranking member of the Sea Power Subcommittee on this committee, I want to thank both Chairman Levin and Ranking Member McCain for their leadership. It's somewhat of an achievement in actually getting the bill to the floor at this time, and I appreciate their determination. As we approach the Thanksgiving holiday next week, I'd like to take a moment to honor the men and women of our armed forces. We're grateful for their service, and our thoughts and prayers are with those now deployed at sea and ashore. My own state of Mississippi is home to many brave service members. Their sacrifices are matched, of course, by those of their families who have supported them day in and day out as they selflessly serve this country. As ranking member of the Sea Power Subcommittee, I've had the pleasure of working with my friend Senator Reid of Rhode Island, who is chairman of that subcommittee. We both work to ensure that this bill meets a wide range of procurement, sustainment, and research and development needs for the Navy and the Marine Corps. Our deliberations were informed by, among other things, a series of hearings we held that addressed force, structure, and modernization for the Department of the Navy. This process has resulted in a bill that contains provisions which will deliver important capabilities and support our sailors and Marines. The bill before us today is supportive of the President's shipbuilding budget request and contributes to the continued vitality of our shipbuilding industrial base, which is very, very important. At a time when we are concerned about job creation, the last thing we want to do is let our industrial base be chipped away. The fiscal year 2012 shipbuilding budget funds new construction for various types and classes of ships, including an aircraft carrier, amphibious ships, submarines, and large and small surface combatants totaling more than $15 billion. From our discussions during the Sea Power Subcommittee meetings, it has become abundantly clear that members are concerned about challenges in maintaining fleet capacity among many classes of ships and the capability gaps that exist that have a real effect on the sailors who crew these ships. From amphibious ships to aircraft carriers to destroyers and to submarines, our Navy must maintain an adequate balance among all classes of ships to ensure our Navy can execute these responsibilities. Then through classified briefings we have received from senior officials in the Navy and in the intelligence community, the Sea Power Subcommittee also is well aware of the imminent and emerging threats facing our sea services. America must maintain its capability to project power and uphold our obligations to our friends and allies throughout the world. This means robust investment in sea power, and I'm heartened that this bill contains such an investment. With the Deficit Reduction Committee's recommendations due to Congress in less than a week, I know all of my colleagues agree that cutting our deficit and reducing our national debt responsibly is a must. Failing to act will put the burden on our children and grandchildren. We must make tough decisions now on spending because our current track is unsustainable. I hope the Deficit Reduction Committee is able to come to an agreement on spending priorities because the alternative is unacceptable cuts in national defense. We must remember that national defense is solely a federal responsibility. Failure to reach consensus would have grave consequences for our military. Marine Corps Commandant General James Amos cautioned about such cuts earlier this week. So in conclusion, Mr. President, I believe the National Defense Authorization Bill reaffirms our commitment to national security and to our men and women in uniform. I urge my colleagues to act quickly on this important piece of legislation, and once again I thank and commend my friends Chairman Levin and Ranking Member McCain. And I yield the floor.
Mr. President.